Welcome to Window Dressing's Halloween bonus episode. This year, I am talking about the classic teen softcore horror film Urban Legend. The film has an ensemble cast that includes Tara Reid, Joshua Jackson, Rebecca Gayheart, and everyone's favorite hot bad boy turned alleged sexual predator, Jared Leto. It's in the same vein as I Know What You Did Last Summer and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which have both been Halloween special episodes from years past. The most significant difference is that the killer matters way more in this film than it did in the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise. And there is a redhead in this one. The film opens on a rainy night inside a picture-perfect late 1990s SUV, driving down what looks like a Pacific Northwest road, but turns out to be a much scarier road somewhere in the Northeast. A young brunette with a pixie cut worthy of 1998, the year the film was released, sings alone in her giant car to Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse of the Heart, which she has on tape and is understandably her comfort song. She realizes she is running out of gas, but makes it to an abandoned-looking station. This is where the question of what state she is in really becomes an issue for me. She literally honks for service. Yes, it's pouring rain, but there are only a handful of states where even 20-somethings in fancy SUVs are allowed to honk for service at a gas station. And in my experience, it's mostly in the Pacific Northwest. But I do have a memory of a full-service gas station on Martha's Vineyard, so is she in Massachusetts? A man with a debilitating speech impediment, but kind eyes, takes her credit card and fills her tank. He comes out of the office and says she needs to go in and take a call from the credit card company. Apparently, there is a problem. She begrudgingly follows the man inside the service station. The line is dead. She runs away before the stuttering man can get out the words, "There is someone in your back seat." That someone takes her head off with an axe in a single blow. So begins the modern reenactment of urban legends on a mysteriously located northeastern college campus called Pendleton. We meet the players in a traditional mystery story setup akin to Fog Island or Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians. Everyone is at this campus that looks like Brown in Rhode Island, but as we've already discussed, might be Massachusetts. Dry lightning highlights the brickwork of the building's exterior in a shot that is so perfect, it makes me feel as if I am inside a Nancy Drew book or a Murder, She Wrote episode. But one of the ones that is in Boston, not Cabot Cove. I'm pretty sure you have to pump your own gas in Maine. Inside, the whole gang is listening to Sasha's sex-positive radio show. Sasha is played by the one and the only Tara Reid, the messy blonde whose lore spans decades and continues to inspire young women everywhere to bleach their hair and opt for over-the-top in defiance of deference to the opposite sex. The gang includes the redhead I'd mentioned earlier, Natalie Simon, played by Alicia Witt, Jared Leto, the nerdy college newspaper man, Paul Gardner, Rebecca Gayheart, a.k.a. the Noxema Girl, plays Brenda, and Michael Rosenbaum plays Parker Riley. Parker has one of my favorite lines in the whole film. When asked by Natalie how Sasha comes up with this stuff, meaning her sexy sex-positive advice on her radio show, Parker says, "She devours every issue of Cosmo, calls it her Bible." For those of you who are listening who are younger than me, which seems utterly impossible since I am practically a child, might not remember the days of Cosmo giving tween and teen girls advice about the secret G-spots on their man's body, or their suggestion that if you are too lazy to apply eyeliner every day, you should consider getting it tattooed on. The outlandish and iconic girlhood delivered in the pages of magazines like Cosmo is a lost art, like physical gossip rags and Claire's, and I guess MTV too. The one member of the group that is not present initially is Pacey, Joshua Jackson from Dawson's Creek. His character in this movie is named Damon Brooks. We meet him shortly after hearing an on-campus urban legend about a psycho professor who murdered a whole floor of students with a hunting knife in the now boarded up Stanley Hall. Damon is rushing the fraternity that throws a yearly party celebrating the mythos of this supposed massacre. Conveniently, everyone is learning about modern folklore in one of their classes, aka urban legends. The audience gets exposition, and the players get a roadmap of the mayhem that is about to ensue on their generic northeastern campus. One that we assume is in a state where you are either not allowed to pump your own gas or there are still full-service gas stations, which now that I consider the time period is possible. I got my license in 2001, and I remember there were a few. Speaking of the decapitated girl who wouldn't pump her own gas, news breaks out of her murder on campus via a sensationalist article written by Laurel Canyon creep Jared Leto. That's Paul, the newspaper boy. He is quite a narcissist prick in the movie, and it upsets Natalie to no end, while the picture-perfect Brenda finds his brand of bull-in-a-china shop charm intoxicating. Natalie knew the murdered girl, but lied about it for reasons unknown. She accepts the kind comfort of Damon. He takes her to talk in his car, which blares the theme song to Dawson's Creek, which is such a sweet moment of culture past that was very much present at this moment. I'm going to take this opportunity to describe Natalie's look. She has that down-to-earth grace that gets all the guys. She is pretty, but plain, moldable, quiet, and kind. Men love that. She is sexy, but not overtly sexual. The only fiery attributes she has is her red hair. This is a classically written female protagonist. She is essentially a man, except slightly moodier and more fuckable. Great job, guys. Anyways, Damon dies. It's the urban legend about the guy who leaves the car and is hanged above it while the panicked girl drives away in fear, sealing his fate. As a racist aside, this movie features an overzealous black security guard named Reese, played by Loretta Devine, who models herself after Foxy Brown. Loretta's performance is fantastic, and I get this is a horror movie built on tropes, but it's a bit on the nose even for a self-aware teen spoof of a horror film. Natalie goes to Reese after Damon is murdered, but of course, the body and the evidence of the crime are gone by the time they return to the scene. This is the same playbook the fisherman in the rain slicker followed in I Know What You Did Last Summer and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Luckily, the gang connects the two murders and urban legends they learned about in class. This is the moment when our heroine utters the first line that makes her the last girl standing. With dramatic music playing and a wobbly, tearful voice that is shaky and bordering on vocal fry, she says, "Someone out there is taking all these stories and making them reality." I can't help but laugh at her, especially considering her outfit choice of a cornflower blue button-up and a mud brown cardigan. I'm not the only one who thinks this little speech is funny. The brilliant and beautiful Tara Reid, Sasha, laughs along with me. She, in major contrast to Natalie, is wearing her blonde hair in pigtails with raspberry red lips, a navy blue tank top, and her bra strapped down on one side. She looks like a vision of co-ed joy, while Natalie is tortured in her horrible light blue button-up, unsteady voice, and barely there mauve lip. Natalie comes home to her dorm after dark. She rooms with a goth girl named Tosh. Tosh reminds me of a MAC makeup artist I used to know who took passive aggression in a shared household to a new level. She's also really into computers, which even in our current day and age gives me the ick. So nothing against goths, I just find chat room nerds especially upsetting. It seems to always lean towards woman-hating under the guise of alternative community kinship. Tosh ends up murdered. Poor Natalie is becoming more popular with each death of her personal connections. But she still isn't believed by her friends or the one security guard that Damon is dead. After all, she might be one of the boys, but she is still a woman, and no one believes women, no matter how chill they are. It's right after Tosh's murder, or suicide as the school has branded it, that Paul's crush on Natalie and Brenda's crush on Paul become apparent. There is nothing like a love triangle to wreck a girl's complexion, even the Noxema girl, who was looking lovelier than Natalie could ever hope to be just by virtue of her earnest crush and giddy curls. But like a good girl's girl, Brenda offers to comfort Natalie, who tells her she needs to be alone, but ends up spending time with the intrepid reporter and her best friend's crush, Paul. But her naivety about the obvious attraction that her best friend has for her new lapdog keeps her goody two-shoes image intact, at least to Paul and the other people, I mean men, that count to Natalie. I have to admit that Jared Leto's eyes are very persuasive, and that is said with a fully formed hatred of the man. Their opposite gender buddy cop act becomes quite amusing after Natalie convinces him of her idea about a serial killer. They question the janitor as a team about the professor turned homicidal maniac that is rumored to have cleared out a floor of students with a knife 25 years before. The janitor has long, stringy hair, a gaunt face, and hunched shoulders. He says in hushed tones to the 20-somethings, "Talk to Wexler." Wexler is the professor who taught them all about modern mythology, the lesson that served as this film's preamble. The duo breaks into Wexler's office and snoops around. They find a secret room behind the bookcase filled with weird stuff, like a freshly shined axe, a puppet, and a scary fur-lined jacket. The professor finds them hiding there, and then they accuse him of murder in front of the dean, who rebuts their accusations against a tenured professor by announcing that Paul is fired from the paper and that Natalie's past can be weaponized against her if need be. Something to do with probation before she started at the college. It all seems stupid, but Paul is up in arms and Natalie looks like a quiet Gap ad in her deep purple boat neck top, which is conveniently chosen to make her ginger locks pop against her pale skin. Thankfully, we are soon alone with Brenda, who is swimming laps in the school pool, which weirdly has a plastic slide. There's something about indoor laps in a blood-red bikini on the eve of a big storm that truly makes me miss 1998. Pre-9/11 doom and gloom not only had bouncy curls, clear skin, and a great body, but it was also surprisingly cozy. Post-swim, the spooky yet chlorinated clean vibes are dirtied by Natalie's whiny retelling of how she and the first murder victim caused a car accident the summer before school by playing the high beam prank on an unsuspecting driver. This basically consists of chasing someone down until they crash. That person died. Natalie was a teenage killer. She is now a sad girl with a tight purple top on. Brenda, always the girl's girl, convinces Natalie to come to a party and get her mind off of all the murder and mayhem. The party is, of course, the annual celebration of the Stanley Hall Massacre, because that feels right. Meanwhile, Paul gets lucky when the lanky janitor leaves an old newspaper on his desk featuring an article about the Stanley Hall Massacre. It turns out that Professor Wexler was the only survivor of this real event. It seems sort of insane that the journalism student, Paul, would not have searched old newspapers for any hint of the story. After all, this was just 25 years prior at the same school he attends. But he does have pretty eyes, so that may have been enough to get him this far in life. I may have failed to mention it, but there was a scene earlier when he was literally chewing gum. I don't know about you, but I find that to be an especially scathing detail of his character that points directly to him being a ditz. He rushes to the party to tell Natalie about the newspaper article, not the chewing gum. He takes the opportunity to let their shared interest turn into a kiss. Natalie acts like a deer in the headlights, similar to the guy who she killed in her car. Unfortunately, Brenda, who walks in to witness this event, doesn't think her friend should be as unwitting as a doe-eyed deer. But what does she know anyways? She's just a perfect beauty who expected her best friend not to make out with her crush. Unfortunately, like a lot of us were when we were 20 years old, Natalie is too dumb to recognize who she should have allegiance to in the room. And let me be clear, it is not Jared Leto. Brenda is wearing a cobalt blue, tight satin dress that looks like the sluttier version of the baby blue Betsy Johnson dress that Alicia Silverstone wore in Clueless 2 years earlier. Brenda's hair is back in one of those zigzag headbands that were popular around this time. Her wild curls escape slightly to frame her perfect face, which twists into tearful rage post-betrayal by the dull but fuckable redhead she called her best friend. Sasha's boyfriend, who is throwing the party, calls Paul a mediocre Woodward and Bernstein wannabe. After Paul warns him that there is a killer on the loose, Sasha tells her boyfriend she is leaving for a while to go to the radio station. That couple is my favorite couple of all time. Unfortunately, Sasha's open-aired ideas around sex make her a favorite victim in horror films of this ilk. She is on borrowed time as it is with her shiny blonde hair and overlined lips. She runs in the rain, becoming her own personal video vixen in a wet t-shirt contest. But Sasha doesn't die next. Her obnoxious but charming boyfriend does. There is an awful bit of animal cruelty before that, and I cannot bear to describe it. And then a very brutal death for Sasha's sexual partner. It's torturous and brutal, as if the men are getting it much worse than the women. This is a very clear sign that we are not dealing with a traditionally structured teen horror film. But before we can think too deeply about this subversion of tradition, the female security guard, Reese, is being disregarded by the 911 dispatcher after she finds a pool of blood so large it all but guarantees a dead body. Remember, I Believe Women wasn't a thing until after 2016. Before that, it was not culturally advantageous to pretend to care. Speaking of showy signs of identity politics, Sasha is live on air hosting her radio call-in show that highlights her acceptable form of female empowerment in the 1990s, sexual liberation. The call she is on is unceremoniously disconnected seconds before she is hunted down and murdered live on the air. She is wearing a white corseted slip with a black jacket. Her nails are sparkly, snow white, and square-tipped. Her lips are overlined, and she is wearing a spiked dog collar around her neck. She makes a pretty harrowing run for it and comes really close to surviving. Her screams are top-tier horror queen screams. She is tear-stained and whimpering in her last moments on air and in life. Honestly, only Sarah Michelle Gellar rivals her performance as a butchered beauty queen. Meanwhile, Natalie is starting to suspect Paul of the murders because his personality is that of a cagey narcissist, and it makes him look guilty. I will say that Natalie's shocked and scared look is engaging. Her eyes go wide and her lips fall open slightly, making her look like, oh wait, she looks like a porn star. I guess my read of her being a fuckable cool girl was grounded in reality. This cast the sexual liberation of Sasha and her untimely death in a different light. I can see how a woman who enjoys sex and has a voice would not be as attractive as a vapid, fuckable girl who only supports the men in the room. It makes sense that Natalie would be the ultimate target of, spoiler alert, a female serial killer. This is why the slut didn't get it first, and why the torture is reserved for the men. Brenda runs into Natalie and Paul in the rain through a planned twist of fate. They all get in his car to head for help. They stop for help at a gas station, but unfortunately don't fill up, so we get no further information about whether this is a pump-your-own gas station or a full-service station, or even more mysterious, both. While Paul is inside, Brenda apologizes to Natalie for Natalie's betrayal. What the fuck? If this isn't a dead giveaway that the payback is imminent, then I don't know what is. Nobody in their right mind would apologize for this. Natalie is too dull to reciprocate. She smiles and hugs Brenda, accepting no fault and taking all the grace offered to her. Mid-hug, a cell phone rings. The girls get out and open Paul's trunk, where they find the rotting body of Professor Wexler. They run. Paul sees them and follows in tow. Everyone gets split up, but the lanky-haired janitor in a pickup truck picks Natalie up on the road. But he happens to have that scary furred hooded coat that the murderer wears in the cab of his truck. She tries to get out of the car in a panic, further diluting the plot. A vehicle without headlights comes down the road. The janitor flashes his high beams, initiating the urban legend that started this whole thing. They crash. Natalie drags herself out of the truck and runs again. There's a lot of last girl running in this movie. After this added diversion, Natalie makes it back to campus, where she again hears screaming. She follows the sounds into the boarded-up Stanley Hall, the location of the massacre 25 years prior. Natalie finds all the bodies of her friends, and then what appears to be the lifeless body of Brenda laid out on a bed surrounded by candles. Pathetic Natalie sits and sobs quietly, the held-back sobs of a sobered and sane woman. Brenda sits up and punches Natalie out with a wicked and sexy smile rivaled only by her wild curly hair and perfect features. When Natalie wakes up, she is tied to the bed, looking up at Brenda's eyes, which are large and horrifying in their beauty and rage. Brenda says, "I must say, Natalie, you have proved your friendship to me, coming all the way out here to rescue me without even a little pepper spray to defend yourself." Her voice is laced with vitriol and sweet and low. Natalie cries weak-willed tears that seem to be designed to perform to the men in the room, even though they are all dead. When Brenda removes the tape from Natalie's mouth, the first thing Natalie says is, "You're fucking crazy." What's next, Natalie? Calm down? I don't think Natalie could have done more to prove herself a traitor to her sex, but I was wrong. These words wrap that particular accusation up with a pretty pink bow. The wonderful thing about Rebecca Gayheart as the serial killer is that she isn't the trope of a rape revenge type of female killer that was popularized in the 1970s and 1980s. She is a proper feminist kind that has it out for traitors to her sex regardless of gender, like Natalie. Natalie just proved herself to be a patriarchal sympathizer with her words and actions. Thankfully, Brenda has the good sense to laugh in Natalie's face before she kills her. Brenda knows how Natalie found herself in this unfortunate position to begin with. Walking away from the murder of a young boy because of the court's leniency given her socioeconomic status couldn't be more aligned with the patriarchy if she had actually been a boy. Preferably an athlete who raped an underage girl. Natalie whines, "Why?" Brenda mocks her, "Why? Why?" And then finally screams, "Why?" She turns on a projector, showing her happily posing with a young man that Natalie was involved in killing in that ill-fated high-beam flashing car accident the summer before college. His name was David Evans. He was hot, like a blonde James Dean, tall, with soulful eyes. She screams, and her eyes flash with the ferocity of a wolf. A lovely, pale blue-eyed wolf. Her plan for Natalie is torture via the kidney heist urban legend. My favorite moment is when she slaps Natalie for biting her and calls her a stupid bitch. There is something about the simplicity of this insult that feels very Cardi B to me, in a gangster in a dress kind of a way. Reese, the security guard, comes to Natalie's rescue, but is no match for the ferocity of the wild-haired she-wolf that Brenda has become in her heightened state of rage. Brenda explains that Natalie's death will force a devastated Paul right into her arms. At first glance, this appears to be a woman letting a man get in between them. But in reality, it's easy for Natalie to not care about the stakes of a man's affection because she has had all the men's affection by playing for the patriarchy from day one. Brenda has felt the consequences of losing her love, her security, and her dignity all to Natalie. But she is expected to swallow it and remain sane and socially acceptable. That hardly seems reasonable to me. People woefully underestimate how much a woman's value socially and culturally is still reliant on the affection of a man or the acceptance of men in general. Fail to play by those rules and you feel it quickly. The accumulation of rage at real loss of love, loss of respect, and dignity at the hands of other women who are playing by men's rules can become too much to bear. We know men are out to get us. But when women don't seem to notice, or worse, when they actually benefit from that system, it feels like you have been done doubly dirty. The narcissist with pale blue eyes that rival the beauty of Brenda's come in the room slow clapping for the killer. I'm talking about Paul. It is all a ruse to rescue his nitwit girlfriend, but his ability to gaslight Brenda firmly places him in the never going to be trustworthy category, even for a pushover like Natalie. He asks Brenda to hand over the gun. She says, "You're cute, Paul, but you're not that fucking cute." Then Reese gets up and shoots Brenda, and then Natalie gets the gun and shoots Brenda again. And then that is the end of that. I think it's important to note that the man in the room, Paul, is not effective in taking down Brenda. She is shot by the women in the room. The hatred of women knows no bounds or gender, but an icon of feminist homicide cannot be killed with 2 measly bullets. She pops back up, axe in hand, in the back seat of Paul's car, and then is killed again in a car accident that sends her body straight into the river. Her body was never found, and we do a circle game where the next generation of students tells this story around their campus coffee shop, and guess who is there to set the story straight? Brenda, and she is looking lovelier than ever. Stay vigilant, ladies. Never turn your back on a soft-spoken redhead who acts like one of the guys. Always opt for girl's girl behavior and skincare that keeps you as fresh and lovely as Noxzema. Oh yeah, and avoid full-service gas stations. Thank you for listening to Window Dressing's Halloween bonus episode. I will return to my regularly scheduled programming soon. Please like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening, and follow me on Instagram at Window Dressing Podcast for more content. I'm Madeline Jane Auble.